I called the show Solo Group Show because almost everything in that show is a collaboration between me and at least one other person. I'll explain some of the details of that once we get into the slides, and I'm happy to talk about it more. And with that, I'm going to see if I can start the slides, and if you would cut the spotlights, please, so it's a little darker. So the first slide that should come up in a moment is from a collaboration with fellow front member Kathy Stark. This is the panel that I started. It's 9 by 12. You see it in the gallery across the street. I only did a couple of photos of the work I did with Kathy somehow, so there's fewer of these than all of the others, but that was the beginning and this is the end. This is, I started it and she finished it, and the patterns a lot of those came from her. This is the panel that Kathy started, and that's her first contribution. And then I struggled and tried to figure out how to add to it without screwing it up.
Glenn, could you speak up?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Should I ask them to turn the lights down?
Yes, please. And I did get a microphone, but I thought that I was going to be able to project. I will just start projecting. This is, whoops, we already skipped past it. See, this is the way these slideshows go. This is, thank you for the lights, that's great. This is Anne Cogbill Rose's panel that she started, and I felt a little bad about how extremely I changed it right away. And she's not in the audience tonight, so I don't know how she feels about it. That's when she gave it back. So basically, I started all of these panels a year ago, traded them all back and forth with my collaborators about once a month. And so some of the marks that you're seeing are mine and some are my collaborators, and that's almost my finished move. That's my finished move.
Whoa.
And I think I also turned it sideways at the end, but the slide ended up this way. Orientation actually changed a few times. Obviously this one had a pretty strong orientation from the beginning, so I did not turn it sideways. This is the one that I started and handed to Anne Cogbill Rose. And it went relatively gently, I'd say. Didn't change quite so extremely, although it did, the sun went down. And it's hard to tell in these slides, but there's a fair amount of reflective material in there. I think Anne had some silver paint on the moon and some other part. All of these really surprised me in interesting ways. This one is a good example. This is Elizabeth Mazzilli. The panel that she started, and it went kind of all over the place. That's my first edition. I have not previously really gotten into collage at all, so I don't know what I was doing. And then a little hard to see, but up here is a bird's foot that's clawing around the googly eye. A lot of what I was working in on most of the panels ended up being water-soluble crayons, and then also some watercolor and gouache, and of course on this one some collage, but really I only dipped my toe into the collage at the beginning. Elizabeth, I think, contributed more of the fun things on top. And so once a month, basically, I would get these things that I had worked on, but that had changed while I wasn't looking. And I would try to figure out what to do next. So this is my last move on this one. Whichever panel I started, my collaborator finished. And whichever panel my collaborator started, I finished. Other than that, they are not really mostly paired. Often they really diverged from each other in interesting ways. Sometimes both panels of a pair ended up looking similar, but not always. So this is the panel that I started and Elizabeth finished in about the middle of the passing back and forth.
Is that a real leaf?
2 real leaves, I'm pretty sure. And for some reason, when I get a leaf, I always kind of want to cut it up and tear it into pieces, and then I feel kind of bad. So I was trying to restrain myself a little bit, I think, there. I only cut a couple of windows out of the leaves. And then for some reason, I took a wooden fork and made a bunch of marks with paint and a wooden fork. I think a lot of the time I really wasn't sure why I made the choices that I made. And I think the collaboration, for some reason, spurred that kind of behavior. I always try to be not too deliberate, but this really pushed me out of straightforward decision-making mode. So this is with James Secor. This is the panel that I started and he finished. And James is, I think, the only front member with whom I had done collaborative work before this whole project. We had a couple of paintings in a show at the Wood Gallery 2 summers ago, maybe. We are near neighbors on Prospect Street here in Montpelier, and we both did landscape paintings and traded them back and forth with each other in kind of the same way, and I really enjoyed it. So that was one of the spurs for this process. This is the panel that James started and I finished. This one changed a lot, although it definitely still held the basic forms, I think. And at this point, I can't say for sure with any of them really who did which element. I mean, with some of them I can. But for instance, if I look at like the marks on the mountains or how they change tones, I can't tell you who made that move. Maybe James can.
I don't think so.
You can't, James? No.
Who added the eyes in the sky?
So the eyes were there as green marks. James put the green marks there, and I turned them into eyes, I think.
Is that a theme, the googly eyes?
Maybe it is. Is that a theme? Yes, I have not detected it until just now. This one is with Jonathan Rose. This is the panel that I started and he finished. He's not here tonight because they're in Mexico. And this was really strange to me. The whole time I was working on it vertical orientation instead of horizontal, And before he left for Mexico, he said, well, clearly it's horizontal. And clearly it's about the asteroid strike that killed the dinosaurs. And I said, oh, yes, clearly. I knew it all along. And then this is a good example of panels, I think, that really diverged from each other. This is the other one that I did with Jonathan Rose. He started it, and I finished it. And to my eye, at least, it doesn't look anything like, or at least very little like the previous one, our other collaborative panel. And it also doesn't look like the rest of my work to me, and it also doesn't look to me like the rest of Jonathan's work. Like neither of these panels look like each other, or like my work, or like Jonathan's work. They just came through the combo, which is, I think that was a real interesting outcome. Also, I'm not totally sure which side is up. I think I might have flipped it a couple of times.
Were there any that, now looking at the progression, that you're like, oh, I actually like
Oh
the
yeah,
second
oh
one better
yeah,
than the last
absolutely.
one?
Yes, yeah, and I'm not going to tell you which.
Yeah.
But yes, the question was, do I like some of the middle states better than the final state? And yeah, I probably do. That was a bit of a mixed feelings as I was making the slideshow, and I was like, oh, I haven't looked at this photo for a while. Oh, too bad I screwed that one up. This is with Sam Thurston. This is the panel that I started and he finished. Sam and I think, have similar approaches in some ways, but I felt like we were really, I haven't talked to him about it so much, but I felt like we were struggling a little bit. And I really like what came out, but it didn't feel smooth. And one of the semi-unofficial rules was that we weren't going to try to talk to each other about the process too much. The passing the panels back and forth was itself going to be the communication. And I think that with Sam, this is the panel that Sam started and I finished. With Sam, I think that was a little bit harder than with some of my other collaborators. At some point, he sent me a letter along with the panel handout. Like, I was doing this, and then I did something else, and then you did this, and like, what's the deal? And I didn't answer it. And so I may have to mend some bridges with Sam. He's not here tonight either. Sam, I love you. We'll figure it out. But yeah, I was definitely working hard on these, and I'm not sure. It might take a couple of years to decide how I feel about them. I mean, I love parts of them. I love all of them.
I have a question.
Yes.
The piece that you started with, Sam,
Yeah.
with those figures, were those continuous line drawings, or?
Not deliberately. So yeah, no, probably not. Yeah, that is fun, but not something I think I tend to think about too much. So this one is with Ned Richardson.
Who
And,
started it?
No, I started this one. Sorry, that was a question. Who started it? I started it. And I had it vertical again, and then it came back and it was horizontal, with a little note on the back, like this side up. So I was like, all right, fine. With Ned, I would say I also was struggling, but in a whole different way.
Did you calculate when you were in charge of starting? I noticed you have one figure, a lot of them were, well, no, there was also the elephant.
Yep.
A couple of figural, a lot of abstract. Did you think about who you were collaborating with in terms of whether you would start with something in the more figural realm or the more abstract realm?
I did think about who I was collaborating with when I started each panel. I don't think that I considered consciously whether to make it a recognizable figure or landscape or not based on that. It was more like, how have I interacted recently with Ned? And then like the pencil touches the paper and something happens and I'm like, okay, this feels like Ned, I'll hand it off.
So you're thinking about the way their art when you start.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking about their art and them as people, but I don't want to make it sound like I had any kind of plan. So that previous little round was with Ned Richardson. He started and I finished. There's a lot of layers to that previous one. This one is with Melora Kennedy. I started this one, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And both of the panels with Melora, this one and the one that's going to come up next, where I was saying before about Jonathan's, how the panels diverged and they also didn't look like my work or his work. With Melora, I felt as though the panels converged and they felt like a real blend in some ways of our approaches and styles. I'm not sure about that, but that's how I feel about it at the moment. Certainly the color palette in both panels I did with Melora ended up pretty similar. So this is the one that Melora started. And like, as far as stages that I regret covering over, I kind of like this stage. Like I love the way it ended up, and also that second move I thought was fun. Another thing about going back through and seeing all the process photos is that it has shown me in some cases how poorly I observe things. Because like, for instance, this fish has been dorsal fin up to us this whole time and I never even noticed.
Wow, that's cool.
Right, so that's how it ended up. I think I missed a couple of in between photos on that one. That arm came in at some point. This one is the piece that I started and Kate Ruddle finished, and it immediately turned sideways. And I had thought that was like a head and shoulders person, and now it is a huge turtle with someone on it, I think.
A gunner.
Yep, and then there's a city that started to grow down in the distance there.
I always thought it was a whale, and then at the opening I was like, oh my god, it's a turtle.
See, yeah, okay, good. Thank you, Kate.
I never saw it that way. It was
Yeah.
so funny.
Yeah, I think I was straight.
Yeah.
really political.
Yeah, my husband was like, it's a turtle. I was like, oh, of course.
Big, orange headed.
You got nice big teeth.
There with all these red and white and blue stripes and stars and someone with a gun on top.
Yeah.
It was very political.
Did you ever, when you
Not
watched
now.
back,
Okay.
But halfway through,
You're
it was
like,
like, oh my god, that's so
oh.
cool.
But look, the spikes down.
I know.
I
It's
don't
really
like
interesting.
that direction, but then almost felt obligated to, if it was obvious that they were taking it in a very different direction, did you feel any obligation to try to follow in that?
I mean, I think that it is
Interesting.
so the question is like, if I didn't like the direction something was taking, how did I navigate that? Maybe I'm paraphrasing. So first of all, a lot of my collaborators are in the audience, so I gotta be careful what I say. But honestly, like I think that the process from the start felt to me like it was gonna be frustrating to some extent, and fun. I think I was imagining it, so this is, by the way, the piece that Kate Ruttle started and I finished. These slides do not do this thing justice, I'm sorry. It's very difficult for me to understand how to clearly show this thing. Please do look at it in the gallery. But sorry, to answer the question, I think I was imagining it as if I was gonna be dancing with a whole bunch of folks. And I'm not a dancer, I'm not a very good dancer when I try, but like sometimes you're leading and sometimes you're following, and you don't always love exactly the moves that the partner is making, but as long as you can choose to be in the dance for a certain limited amount of time and try to enjoy it, then even if they do something that's like, whoa, that was a surprise, you know, you can react better or worse to that. So this shows you a little bit of what this thing looks like with its appendages.
But it is more diaphanous.
It is definitely very diaphanous. It's a panel inside a bag. That's the panel inside the bag at some stage, maybe a finished stage.
And then this one makes me wonder too whether current events played a role, because you know, there was definitely kind of a flag.
Oh, sure, yes. So for me, I am almost never thinking specifically about current events when I'm working on art. I feel like it's a relief to be working on art and not reading the news. But I do read the news and I think about it, so it's all in the background. This one is collaboration with Delia Robinson, in case anyone who doesn't know Delia's work couldn't guess. And she started it and I ended up finishing it. I thought this was interesting partly because of her kind of opening move, which a couple of other folks did something similar, where she just did the top bit and like left the rest blank for me, and I was like, oh, that's really nice. That's the finished version.
Who finished both agree on when it's finished?
The finish is just based on timeline. I finished that one, and basically I was like, at the beginning I said, I think that this is going to be my solo show, basically, which is a year out. So we have a year. Would you like to collaborate with me for a year? We'll pass it back and forth once a month.
Okay.
And
But how did you know when to stop the process?
when the show went up.
That was it?
Pretty much. I mean, but we had that plan from the beginning. So we said, you know, we are going to trade this back and forth once a month for a year, and then it will be done. And yes?
Even if it's, I mean, like, oftentimes, whether it's you're finishing it or the other person's finishing it, is it, like, sometimes it's overworked? What do you feel like it's overworked?
Of course not. None of them are overworked in any way. What are you trying to say?
Because you're on that sort of hard timeline. I mean, what if you get to a place and you collaborate and say, oh, you know, this is before the time we're supposed to stop,
Yep.
and I feel like this piece is finished.
Yeah.
But you guys just kept going?
So I think, again, I went into it, and I feel as though I'm speaking for some of my collaborators in a slightly uncomfortable way. So other folks may have different answers. Oh, by the way, we skipped through, this is now Marjorie Kramer, the one that I started. I went into it with the intention that it was going to last the whole year, and that I was going to keep trying to edit and change and figure it out and make it as wonderful as possible at the last minute and not close it down before then. And I think I was thinking about that still in maybe a kind of analogous way to a dance or some other art form, where like you don't stop dancing before the song's over. I mean, sometimes you do, but typically you go through even if you get tired or like you're like, oh, I don't like this part, or I think I've done all my best moves, So I'm gonna sit back down.
With Marjorie.
So this is,
This
yeah,
is
so
Marjorie started
again,
this
this is
one?
the one that Marjorie started and I continued.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Yeah, and with Marjorie, I feel again as though I really can't, it becomes pretty hard for me to remember which of us made which marks. I think I did the dark blotchy ones. But I'm no longer totally sure. And honestly, in a way, I feel as though maybe another answer to your question, Mary, is a lot of them, I think, might have had really good, like, third stages that then got covered over. And some of them might have potential to get even better if we kept working on them. And I haven't talked about anything. So this is with Cheryl Betts. This is the one that Cheryl started.
Yeah, wow.
With Cheryl, I think that she's not here tonight. I found myself putting in things that I thought were figures, like there's a head there and shoulders, kind of hidden behind the screen, and then I would get it back and I would feel like the figure was gone. And I couldn't decide whether I hadn't made it clear enough, or whether Cheryl had been like, you know, I don't think we need a figure there. But it was a pretty thrilling one. I like the blue up top. That was fun.
I think the figure is still really clear. It's just she's done some things to it.
She definitely did a couple things.
I like the figure.
Turn green.
Wow.
I don't see the figure.
Head, shoulders.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Top of the head is masked behind the lower bar
It's
of
like
the window.
it's sitting behind a window.
One
Yeah.
open eye,
Yeah.
one closed eye.
One open eye, one closed eye at this
Yeah,
point. Yeah,
totally.
maybe. Yeah.
Wow.
So then this is the one that I started and Cheryl
Yeah, like
finished.
the first time we brought it in place. Yikes. Yeah.
All those cobwebs.
Oh, God.
And did you guys start them and pass them at the same time? So, in other words, you each started them without seeing what the other person did to your
Correct. Yeah.
beginning?
Yeah. Yeah. We did not see them until they were passed each time. So.
But with everyone, you had a sense of what their style was just because you knew them?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, so this is, all these collaborations are with 12 out of the 24 members of the front at the moment. Not that the other ones didn't, I mean, each other member had a different reason, but they were all invited. Lots of folks had plenty of things to do without my silly project. And we might do more stuff again. But yes, I feel as though I know at least a little bit about each of my collaborators' styles beforehand.
Did you put in the sign
I
there?
did put in the sign and I felt a little guilty about it.
Oh, no, I think it's interesting.
Yeah, certainly interesting. Okay, so that was all the collaborations with the front members. Now this is my friend Evan Primo from back in the pandemic shutdown when Scrag Mountain Music, which Evan was part of, was doing live stream stuff. So we did a bunch of rehearsals where he played his instrument and I did oil stick landscapes on primed paper. And we tried to do it as if we were a jazz improv duo-ish sort of thing. Like I would paint in reaction to his music and he would change his music in reaction to my, like he could see me as I was painting, he would try to follow. So we did a bunch of those and then we recorded it. Okay, and then, so that was Evan Primo's collaboration. This is the beginning of the clown plinth home tree piece that's in the center of the back of the gallery. It's an old chair that used to live in the front. Marge Kramer brought it in off the street, I think. And it was broken from the get-go, and it kept being more and more broken until I finally like absconded with it to my studio, tied it up with old clothes and underwear. And the point for me was to make something that actually could hold something up, but kind of looked like it couldn't, and also looked silly. And so also at the last minute I put that rock in the bottom little pouch there, and with a little sign that said, you know, take whatever's here and leave something else, because that spot needed a little bit of weight to hold that foot down. And so someone left the paint can for me and took the rock. That was good. But then, if someone is here who did this, I want them to fess up. Not the paint can, that's fine. But like, since then, more things have just been like popping up, and no one has been taking anything. So I don't know where that came from. And then and I didn't even take so there's a book about Dali that showed up under the plant. And there's a tree cookie chunk that's by the right foot, and a wrench or something. And there's like a couple other things over there now that have appeared just like today. So I went back and underlined. You gotta take something. You can't just leave all this stuff. But that's okay. Okay, and then I only have this one photo of this one. This is the one in the window. Clown Plinth 2, Puss in Boots. That's a pair of my old boxers with air dry clay. Then this one is an old T-shirt with a mason jar and a couple of knives and a chunk of 2x4, and that thing that's tied to it I ended up replacing in a different orientation. That is a beautiful little portrait head made by my teacher Garth Evans of my other teacher Graham Nixon of the studio, both of the studio school. Back when I was studying there, I had Garth make me that little head, and Graham died just this past spring, or this past winter. We are now in spring, and I asked Garth if I could add his head to the thing. Here we are. This is me taking a photo of me doing my self-portrait. That's the first stage of that self-portrait in the window. I worked on it like that, with looking in the mirror over my shoulder to paint, to reverse the mirror. Excuse me, reverse the mirror reversal. And I think I also did most of it. I tried to do most of it lefty, but I don't know whether I succeeded. Well, I mean, I didn't. I switched back and forth by choice.
Wow.
Thank you.
It's so good, Glenn.
A lot of scratching in the end. And then I think the last thing is the free drop panel. And that is the big thing that you should all contribute to if you have not already. You can either make marks on it with the markers, or you could also, or both, you could donate to the Central Vermont Refugee Action Network. Right now they have a March Arts Marathon. Folks are posting once a day drawings or whatever they have. And this is my contribution. I'm going to keep working on it every day through March, post about it every day, and hopefully get a little money. And that's it for the slides. I'm glad folks have been asking questions through. And now is our chance to have any more questions we might want. Could you turn the lights on again, please? I'm not sure they can hear me.
I think they're in the. They can't hear.
They can't hear me? Thank you, I appreciate it. So, that was the slideshow.
I
particularly appreciate your self-portrait as a model, because when I am modeling, I get the opportunity to see me, depending on attendance. Most I've ever had artists in attendance was 12 in one of these small, if it wasn't a school or something. And to see yourself 12 different ways.
Yeah.
I'm thinking how fortunate that is that you at least got yourself in another way.
Right, thank you. Yes. Yeah, it was fun and challenging.
It's spot on, just like the page for governor that you did for me too, you know.
That was great.
Yes.
I was very happy with that. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
I was just, I love the concept of doing this, but having the collaborators be, you know, people you don't know, or or non-artists, or children, or like, I
Yes.
just see so much potential for you to do this in so many different settings. And I think it would be just such a cool experience.
Yeah, thank you. For anyone who didn't quite catch it, opportunities abound for more collaborations, not just with artists or not just with these folks I already know. And I think that's true. I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I do think that the collaborative direction has felt really rich for me. So, you know, I'm going to collapse for a month or two and then we'll see. Cass?
I really liked seeing the panels on such a large scale.
Yeah, very different, right?
There's so much detail that I didn't see when I was looking at them in real life, and
Yes.
so thank you for sharing that. I was wondering also what your thought process was with not discussing the pieces throughout the process. That's my first question, and then my second question is, what would you change if you knew now what you, or like if you were doing this process over?
As far as the process itself, like how would I change the rules or the
Yeah.
guidelines? Yeah. So about the no talking about it guideline, I think that was based on, it's not that I don't like talking, but I think that I enjoy trying to make decisions together sometimes without verbal communication, and I think that my brain behaves very differently when I'm focusing and working on visual material as opposed to language. And so for some reason it felt to me that if we talked about the panels while we were working on them, the talking would take over some of my visual thinking, my sensory thinking, in a way that I wanted to avoid. And again, I think I feel as though I'm reaching for this dancing metaphor the whole time, even though I never dance at all, and maybe I'm wrong about all this stuff. But I think in the same way that it would feel, I think it would feel weird to be like talking about the dancing that you're about to do in the middle of the dance. Like, I'm gonna move my right foot now, and then, are you ready? I'm gonna do the next thing. Like,
I'll
instead
second
of
that one as a dancer.
Okay, so John, you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, that would be weird.
I can dance the whole evening and I don't have a single word.
Right. So I think that's sort of how I thought about it. Was I don't want to bring words into this because they feel not unuseful, but a little foreign to the process. Unnecessary. And then as far as how I would change the process the next time, I'm sure there's tons of ways to do it more gracefully or thoughtfully or just in new different ways. I don't think I'm ready to to come up with any good answer to that. I really enjoyed the way this happened. I didn't think about it very much before I jumped in. And I think that I also enjoy that, like just doing it and not thinking about the process too much. I'd rather do that and see what happens than wait until I have the perfect process.
That's sort of the way you work anyway, right?
I think so, yes. I mean, I don't think that anyone can accuse me of having the perfect process before I start.
Throwing yourself into
Yeah.
an unknown space and
Yes.
see what happens.
Yes, throw myself into an unknown space and see what happens. Yeah. Tim,
So, I love this, thank you so much for sharing
thank
all
you.
the steps along the way. I have one question, so I appreciate the kind of improvisational nature of it, but then you created this system once a month, you're exchanging a dozen
Yeah.
things you're working on.
Yep.
So I'm curious if then, do you either create or fall into a routine, like I'm gonna devote this amount of time per dozen?
Uh-huh.
Or do you end up really spending a lot of time on these 2 or 3 and then
Uh-huh.
whatever you do and this other one is, that's what I'm doing. And it just sits around until you send it back.
Yep. I think that, so for one thing, I think I have presented this as if it was more regular and perfect than it actually was as far as the process.
I'm not presuming regular is
Okay,
perfect, by
yes,
the way. So.
sure, absolutely. But like, the idea at the beginning was once a month trade everything. In practice, over the course of the year, some folks went on vacation. I forgot a couple of times. Everyone kind of like holed up around the election, and I don't think we traded at all for 3 months. I don't know. So it was pretty irregular within the framework. And I think my process, I'm not sure what other folks did, of course, but my process was sort of like, oh, I've got all these awesome 12 things to work on. I'll look at them all for a while and think about it. And then, like, once I have a day to devote to studio time, which is rare, I think I did try to set a kind of like, all right, I don't have much time, so I'm just going to put a solid 40 minutes into each of these and just pound them all out. And once I started, of course, like I'd do 40 minutes on a panel and I'd be like, that needs another 40 minutes. And then I would kind of just have to decide, like, can I devote more time to that one right now? Or do I have to keep going on all the other ones and just try to take the next one? So yeah, it was pretty messy. I did try to keep a clean rhythm for the sake of my own mental well-being.
If I could follow up, because
Yeah.
then I'm curious about, did something from over here kind of creep into what you're doing somewhere else? Because all your collaborators just seem
Oh, yeah, good question. Probably yes.
Maybe, yeah, who knows?
Yes, probably yes. I would say that like, I'm pretty sure that my toolkit and decision-making preferences have been all jumbled up, and like a bunch of things have gotten thrown in and added and changed over the course of this year because of all of these collaborations. Like people have, the folks that I was working with all have really cool ideas and minds, and I was like, oh, I would never have done that. I'm gonna do that from now on. And then I would try it and be like, oh, I can't do that. I'll leave that to whoever, they can do it.
That's why I didn't, because I can't.
Yeah, I'll focus on what I'm good at. But so I would say that at this point, I can't point to anything specific, but I am confident that yes, things cross-pollinated, and I think that as long as I continue to make work from now, things will continue to develop from all of the pollination that's been happening.
So what did this,
Go ahead.
what did
please.
this can you reflect on this project as it relates to your understanding of community, or connection, or relationship, artistic community? Like, has it changed anything about the way that you understand all of that, or given you any insights?
This is where, so when I was supposedly preparing for this talk, I was talking to my partner Kate, who's not here tonight, and she said, "So what's your thesis?" And I said, and then I thought for a while about whether I had to have a thesis, and I decided that I could not articulate it satisfyingly enough to myself right now. I think I feel like I'm dodging all of these, and I don't want to, but I think I'm not prepared to say specifically how my sense of community has changed. But I think I would say that the whole project for me is deeply about my sense of community and interacting with people and how to be a human in the world, which to me is rooted in some part in I don't want to say communication, because that feels like it's a little too like dry and specific in a way, but a kind of recognition that there are other people and a willingness to try to recognize individual other people and check my perceptions and my senses against theirs, and check my sense of self and being against theirs and against the world. I mean, yeah, I could get like really vague and hazy, but I feel like it is all about that kind of thing for me. Trying to integrate myself with the people around me, and with my experience of life. That's not only what I'm trying to do in these specifically collaborative works, but also with all my artwork. Like, that is the project in some ways. It's like integrate myself into the world and into into my sense of the community, and have fun, you know, and surprise myself, get surprised. Also, when I was thinking about what my thesis should be, I was really pleased with my friend Alice Dodge wrote a review in 7 Days about it, and I was like, wow, she said a bunch of stuff that is way better than anything that I could come up with. So please read Alice Dodge's review, and maybe that will, I think that there might be some stuff in there that partly answers that community question. Ellen?
I was very privileged to stumble upon your work with James, who I know is here somewhere.
Over there.
Hi. Again, I've known you both a really long time, and I just stumbled into the work that you two were doing, what is it, almost 3 years ago now?
Yeah.
Together.
Like that.
And I think, you know, what you just said about the question, you were answering the question of thesis, and you said, I don't want to go there, but I think you answered it in a really beautiful way, because you both took this daring step, because your styles are so different, and your approaches are so different, and your reasons are so different, and you took this daring step and said, what the heck? And it was a really amazing thing to watch this collaboration between the two of you, and then to go to the show and to see you doing this now, Glenn, with other people, and knowing the vulnerability of an artist. You know, even if you're exposing yourself to another artist, you're still like cracking yourself open in a way that I think is amazing, and I really want to applaud you for continuing this work that you started with James. I think it's really important work. This connection that you just spoke about, you know, connecting yourself to community and people, and allowing artists to be vulnerable in a community and with each other, and putting that collaboration is the message that we kind of need right now.
Yeah.
And this show is really beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was wondering about the communication aspect. And
Yes.
then anonymity, right? In terms of, would it be better to not know anything about your collaborating artist?
Yeah.
Versus, because, you know, I was struck by this side up comment that on one of the panels, and someone said, hey,
Right.
this is what I want you to do. There's communication. But when you're thinking about, well, gee, I know this person, I know their work, and I'm thinking about how to respond, that's communication in a conversation that's going on, not verbal, but
Yeah.
still in that medium. And, you know, not to put value in either one, but it would be very interesting if you had no idea who the person was, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about that, and the
Yeah.
communication.
That sounds great. And I think, yeah, so I think I would be happy to have something like this with an element of anonymity or not knowing the people ahead of time. I think that you're right that the anti-communication or anti-verbal communication was definitely hedged in a few ways, and I think I guess I would say like there's all sorts of different ways to use our senses and common experiences and so on to be together and act together and move together. It wasn't that I wanted like absolutely no verbal communication. It was like I wanted to try to not focus on that because there's so much of it. And then as far as like back to the question of anonymous collaborations, I think that one of the strong reasons why I chose to do it this way with people that I knew relatively well and whose art I knew relatively well was I've been doing collaborative-ish things here and there for many years, but I haven't before had this kind of focus on it, and I happen to be a member of a pretty awesome group of artists right here, the front, and it felt like an opportunity that was too good to pass up, basically. It was like, okay, here I am in the middle of 24 people whose work I really like, who make very different sorts of things. I want to do something with that specifically. But as far as like potential for anonymous collaboration, one of my other activities is I'm a picture framer at the drawing board. And in that role, I feel as though I'm doing something a little bit similar very frequently. Folks come in, many of them I know, but every week or so, someone comes in who is a complete stranger to me with a piece of artwork or a document or something that I've never seen before, and we work together to come up with some kind of structural and color and material design to frame it in. And that's tons of fun for me. I like, most of the time, I like that kind of interaction over sensory stuff with strangers and friends. I think that we should probably wrap up. Yes, it is 7 o'clock, so folks are, thank you.